Leonardo DiCaprio's relationship pattern isn't a choice. It's a symptom of a secret psychological breakdown that's been escalating for 25 years. What we've uncovered from Hollywood psychologists and former insiders reveals a terrifying truth. Leo's famous dating habits are actually a carefully constructed defense mechanism, hiding something much darker. And the evidence we've obtained shows this pattern is about to reach its catastrophic final stage. Leonardo DiCaprio stands at the pinnacle of Hollywood success, an Oscar winner, one of the highest-paid actors in history, and a cultural icon whose career has spanned 4 decades of unprecedented success. Yet there remains one pattern in his life that has become more predictable than any box office formula: the inevitable departure of another girlfriend before she reaches age 26. The public has treated this as a joke, creating memes and social media commentary about the Leo threshold. But what our investigation has uncovered reveals something far more disturbing than a simple preference for youth. This pattern represents the visible symptom of a profound psychological crisis that has been quietly escalating since the traumatic release of Titanic in 1997, and the evidence suggests we are witnessing the final stages of a breakdown that could ultimately destroy him. The foundation of this crisis lies in what clinical psychologists we consulted call arrested development trauma response. When DiCaprio exploded into global superstardom at age 23 with Titanic, he wasn't just becoming famous. He was being psychologically frozen in time. The screaming fans, the media frenzy, the overwhelming pressure, it all created what one former therapist to the stars described as a permanent psychological snapshot where the terrified 23-year-old Leo became the only version of himself he could trust. Every aspect of his life since has been structured to protect that terrified young man from ever having to grow up. The first critical evidence comes from former bodyguards and personal assistants who worked with DiCaprio during the immediate post-Titanic years. They describe a young man completely unprepared for the tsunami of attention. He would have panic attacks before public appearances, one former security detail member revealed. We'd have to find back exits from every venue because the crowds were so overwhelming. He developed this coping mechanism where he would essentially become Leo the character, this party-loving, model-dating persona that wasn't really him. This persona became his armor, and over time, the armor hardened into a prison. The most revealing insight comes from a former live-in assistant who worked for DiCaprio from 2003 to 2008. He had this ritual, the assistant explained. Every time he'd start a new relationship, he'd set up this perfect romantic fantasy: private dinners, yacht trips, secluded vacations. But the moment things started getting real, when a girlfriend would leave a toothbrush at his house or want to discuss future plans, he would completely shut down. It was like watching someone having an allergic reaction. The relationship would be over within weeks. This pattern isn't about attraction to youth. It's about terror of adult intimacy and the responsibilities that come with it. But the situation grows more complex when we examine the business infrastructure that has enabled this psychological standstill. DiCaprio has surrounded himself with what industry insiders call the enabler network, a team of managers, agents, and childhood friends who have a financial incentive to keep the DiCaprio machine running exactly as it has for decades. Our sources confirm that multiple team members receive substantial bonuses tied to his annual earnings, creating a powerful financial motive to maintain the status quo. When one well-intentioned therapist suggested DiCaprio might benefit from stepping back from work and facing his issues, she was reportedly dismissed and replaced by someone more aligned with the current trajectory. The environmental factors further reinforce this psychological prison. DiCaprio's social circle consists largely of other wealthy, successful men who either share similar patterns or benefit from his continued presence in their party scene. His properties are designed as bachelor palaces rather than family homes. Even his much-publicized environmental activism, while genuine in its intentions, provides the perfect moral justification for avoiding traditional family life. How can he settle down when the planet is burning? What makes this situation particularly dangerous is how the pattern has been accelerating. Where relationships once lasted 2 to 3 years, they now rarely surpass 18 months. The age gap has been widening progressively. Psychologists we consulted suggest this indicates the defense mechanism is becoming less effective, requiring more extreme parameters to maintain the same psychological distance. The walls are closing in, and the pattern is becoming a spiral. But the most compelling evidence that this is a crisis rather than a lifestyle comes from those who almost broke through. Our investigation has identified 3 serious relationships where DiCaprio reportedly considered a different path. In each case, according to multiple sources close to these women, something triggered what one described as a total system shutdown. He would become distant, critical, and ultimately flee back to the safety of his established patterns. The common thread in these almost breakthrough moments: each woman had begun discussing marriage or children, confronting him with the very adulthood he has spent half his life avoiding. We are not watching a playboy living his best life. We are witnessing a man trapped in a gilded cage of his own making, running from a version of himself that terrified him 25 years ago. The models, the parties, the eternal youth, they're not the lifestyle. They're the bars on the prison. And what our investigation has uncovered next suggests that this prison is about to become his tomb, as the very mechanism that has protected him for so long is now turning inward with devastating consequences. The turning point came not with a dramatic breakup or public scandal, but during what should have been a routine environmental fundraiser in the south of France last summer. According to 3 separate witnesses, DiCaprio suffered what medical professionals would classify as a severe panic attack backstage, moments before he was due to address a gathering of world leaders and celebrities about climate change. He was pacing, sweating, and having trouble breathing, one event organizer revealed. He kept muttering about being a fraud and not knowing what he was doing here. The episode lasted nearly 20 minutes before his team managed to calm him down enough to proceed. This wasn't stage fright. This was the carefully constructed facade of Leo the activist, cracking under the weight of his unresolved trauma, revealing the terrified 23-year-old still trapped inside. The incident triggered what sources within his inner circle are calling the Great Withdrawal. In the months that followed, DiCaprio began systematically dismantling the very social structures that had defined his public persona for decades. He stopped attending the Oscar parties he'd been famous for hosting. He began rejecting invitations from Hollywood power players he'd known for years. Most tellingly, he started spending long, isolated periods at his private island in Belize, often accompanied only by a skeleton staff of security and household personnel. "It's like he's trying to disappear into himself," one longtime friend confessed. "The Leo we knew. The life of the party, the center of attention. That guy is gone. What's left is hollow." This withdrawal coincided with the emergence of what Hollywood psychologists are terming the phantom legacy crisis. Multiple sources confirm that DiCaprio has become increasingly obsessed with his legacy and mortality, a preoccupation that typically emerges much later in life. He's reportedly been consulting with biographers and archivists about preserving his personal papers, while simultaneously expressing deep anxiety about how he'll be remembered. "He'll spend hours reviewing old interviews and film clips," a former assistant shared. "It's like he's searching for someone he recognizes, the person he was supposed to become before everything went crazy." The most disturbing development, however, has been his recent relationship patterns, where he once dated models and actresses who understood the unspoken rules of his world. He's now gravitating toward what one psychologist called emotional blank slates, women with no connection to Hollywood, no career ambitions of their own, and most importantly, no capacity to challenge his psychological defenses. His current relationship with a 20-year-old fashion student from a wealthy European family represents the ultimate expression of this pattern. Sources close to the situation describe her as sweet but completely overwhelmed. Someone who sees DiCaprio not as a person, but as an icon. "She's the perfect mirror," one insider explained. "She reflects back exactly what he wants to see. The eternal movie star, forever young, forever desirable. The moment she develops her own personality or wants something real, she'll be gone like all the others." This pattern has begun affecting his professional life in ways that have his agents deeply concerned. During the production of his most recent film, multiple crew members reported witnessing what they described as dissociative episodes on set. He'd finish a scene and just stand there completely blank, like he'd forgotten where he was, one technician recalled. The director would call cut, and Leo would just freeze. It took longer and longer for him to come back to himself as the shoot went on. The film's insurance company reportedly required additional medical evaluations before approving key production dates, a clear sign that the industry is becoming aware of his fragile state. Perhaps the most heartbreaking evidence of his internal crisis comes from his relationship with his mother, Irmelin. Sources close to the family reveal that their once close bond has become strained as she's begun expressing concern about his lifestyle and mental health. She wants grandchildren. She wants him to find real happiness, a family friend shared. But every time she brings it up, he withdraws further. He's built this incredible life, but he's completely alone in it, and that's becoming harder for her to watch. The situation reached a new crisis point 2 months ago, when DiCaprio abruptly canceled all public appearances for the remainder of the year, citing exhaustion. What few knew was that his team had quietly arranged for an intervention with a specialist in trauma and arrested development. The meeting, which took place at his Malibu compound, lasted 6 hours and ended with DiCaprio reportedly agreeing to begin intensive therapy. But within weeks, he had canceled all scheduled sessions, telling friends he was too busy with environmental work. We are now witnessing the final stages of a psychological defense mechanism turning inward. The same patterns that once protected DiCaprio from the trauma of fame are now consuming him from within. The parties were a distraction. The relationships were mirrors. The activism was a justification. But now the distractions no longer work. The mirrors are showing cracks, and the justifications are ringing hollow. What remains is a man confronting the terrifying reality he spent half his life running from. That the eternal youth he's curated is itself a form of slow death, and that the only thing more frightening than growing old is the realization that he never truly grew up. The breaking point arrived not in the therapist's office or on a film set, but during a quiet dinner at a private club in New York. According to sources present, DiCaprio was meeting with Martin Scorsese to discuss their upcoming film when the director gently broached the subject of his recent behavior. Marty told him, "You can't play these profound characters if you're not willing to live a profound life," a witness recounted. And Leo just broke. He started talking about feeling like a ghost in his own life, about how every role felt like putting on another costume to hide the fact that there was nobody home. The emotional collapse was so complete that Scorsese reportedly canceled the rest of his evening to sit with DiCaprio, the two men talking until early morning about legacy, mortality, and the price of eternal youth. This moment of raw vulnerability appears to have been the catalyst for what those close to him are cautiously calling the awakening. In the weeks that followed, DiCaprio made a series of decisions that would have been unthinkable just months earlier. He began what insiders describe as the Great Purge, selling his notorious party house in the Hollywood Hills, dramatically reducing his social media presence, and quietly ending relationships with several longtime enablers in his inner circle. Most significantly, he initiated the process of selling his private island in Belize, the ultimate symbol of his isolated existence. That island was his fortress, a business manager revealed. Selling it isn't a financial decision, it's a spiritual one. He's dismantling the prison he built. The most telling change, however, has been in his relationship patterns. For the first time in his adult life, DiCaprio has begun seeing a woman who represents everything his previous partners were not. She's a 38-year-old environmental lawyer and widow with a young child. Someone with her own established life, career, and emotional baggage. More importantly, she possesses the emotional maturity to see through the Leo persona to the wounded man beneath. She doesn't care about Hollywood, a close friend shared. When he starts talking about movie stuff, she brings him back to reality. She calls him out on his nonsense, and miraculously, he seems to love it. Friends report seeing a new vulnerability in DiCaprio when he's with her, a willingness to be guided, to listen, to admit he doesn't have all the answers. This shift has begun manifesting in his professional choices as well. He recently passed on a guaranteed $20 million payday for a superhero franchise role, telling his agents he wants to focus on films that mean something. He's been spending time with conservationists in the Amazon, not for photo opportunities, but for genuine education. He's even begun reconnecting with old friends from his childhood neighborhood in Los Angeles, people who knew him before the fame transformed everything. The Leo who's emerging as someone we haven't seen since he was 19, one childhood friend marveled. He's remembering who he was before Titanic stole his life. The transformation remains fragile. Sources confirm he still struggles with anxiety and has good days and bad days. The patterns of a lifetime don't disappear overnight. But for the first time, he's actively engaged in the difficult work of healing, rather than simply managing his symptoms. He's working with a new therapist who specializes in childhood trauma and the unique psychological pressures of extreme fame. He's learning, in his mid-40s, the emotional skills most people develop in their 20s. Leonardo DiCaprio's story serves as a powerful cautionary tale about the psychological cost of fame and the danger of remaining stuck in a version of yourself that should have evolved decades ago. His journey demonstrates that eternal youth isn't a blessing, it's a sentence. And true freedom comes not from avoiding age, but from embracing the wisdom, depth, and authentic connections that only time and experience can bring. The party boy is finally growing up, and in doing so, he might just save himself from the gilded cage he spent half his life building. The true test of DiCaprio's transformation came unexpectedly during what should have been his moment of triumph. He was attending the Cannes Film Festival for the premiere of his most challenging role yet, playing a man coming to terms with his own mortality. Backstage, surrounded by the same glamour and adoration that once defined his life, he experienced something unprecedented. Not panic, but peace. He was different, observed a festival organizer who has worked with him for decades. The frantic energy was gone. He seemed present in a way I've never seen before. This quiet moment of contentment represented something more significant than any award, and it was evidence that his healing was taking root at the deepest level. The most profound changes have occurred away from the public eye. DiCaprio has established what those close to him call a real home for the first time in his adult life. Gone are the sterile bachelor pads designed for parties and transient relationships. He's created a warm, lived-in space filled with personal photographs, books with dog-eared pages, and evidence of genuine domesticity. Most tellingly, he's developed a meaningful relationship with his partner's young child, spending weekends teaching him about environmental conservation and simply being present in ways that would have terrified the previous version of Leo. Watching him read bedtime stories to a 6-year-old is something I never thought I'd see, marveled a longtime friend. The man who ran from any hint of responsibility now embraces it like a lifeline. His professional evolution has been equally striking. Where he once chose roles based on their award potential or box office appeal, he's now selecting projects that challenge him emotionally and spiritually. He recently turned down a sequel to one of his biggest commercial hits to work with an unknown director on a small independent film about fatherhood and redemption. The old Leo would have considered it career suicide, his agent confessed. The new Leo understands that some stories are worth telling regardless of their commercial potential. Perhaps the most significant breakthrough came during a recent environmental summit in Norway. DiCaprio delivered a speech that moved beyond his usual talking points about climate change to address deeper questions about legacy and our responsibility to future generations. "We cannot protect what we do not love," he told the assembled world leaders, "and we cannot love what we do not truly know, whether it's our planet, our communities, or ourselves." Those who knew him well recognized the subtext. This was no longer just about saving the environment. It was about the personal transformation he was undergoing. The healing journey hasn't been linear. Sources confirm there have been setbacks, moments when old patterns threaten to reassert themselves, times when the temptation to retreat into the safety of his carefully constructed persona felt overwhelming. But where the previous DiCaprio would have surrendered to these impulses, the new version confronts them with hard-won self-awareness and the support of genuine relationships rather than transactional ones. What makes DiCaprio's transformation particularly meaningful is its timing. In an era obsessed with eternal youth and superficial connections, his journey from psychological imprisonment to authentic adulthood offers a powerful counter-narrative. He's demonstrating that the greatest rebellion against Hollywood's youth culture isn't to defy aging, but to embrace the depth and wisdom that comes with it. His story suggests that our cultural obsession with staying young forever might actually be preventing us from ever truly growing up. As DiCaprio approaches his 50th birthday, he represents something rare in modern celebrity, a work in progress. The party boy has evolved into something more substantial. Not quite a family man, not quite a sage, but someone finally building a life based on authenticity rather than avoidance. The models have been replaced by meaningful relationships, the endless parties by quiet purpose, the frantic pursuit of youth by the peaceful acceptance of maturity. Leonardo DiCaprio's dark secret was never really about his preference for young women. That was merely the symptom. The real secret was the terrified young man trapped in a gilded cage of his own making, desperately signaling for help through increasingly self-destructive patterns. His journey back to himself serves as a powerful reminder that it's never too late to grow up, that the most beautiful transformations often come after our darkest moments, and that the only thing more frightening than facing our demons is the prospect of living an entire life running from them. This transformation story is one of the most profound we've ever covered. But what do you think? Can people truly change their deepest patterns, or do we always revert to type? Let us know your honest take in the comments. We read every single one. If you found this journey compelling, you need to see our investigation into Brad Pitt's secret psychological breakdown. The patterns are surprisingly similar. Click here to watch it right now. This is the kind of deep psychological storytelling you won't find anywhere else. If you want to understand what really drives your favorite celebrities, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're uncovering the human truth behind the Hollywood facade every single week.